Welcome to the Hungaroring here in Hungary, a track that opened back in 1986 and has witnessed some very memorable races. Let's hope we're here to see another classic today.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first real life F1 discussion video on the channel. It is of course K-Gibbs GP here. Thank you very much to Crofty for that lovely introduction there. Today we're going to be previewing the 2016 Hungarian Grand Prix, which of course is set to be happening this weekend at the Hungaroring. It's round 11 of the season, and they call the Hungaroring Monaco without the barriers. And it was a race first held in 1986. Every year since then, in fact, so it has been an ever-present on the calendar for a very long time now. The circuit itself is a big challenge for the drivers. Monaco without barriers, they say, and you do really see the very best racecraft on show, and the real racers in the paddock do come to the front in this particular event. And overtaking is difficult, but possible. Daniel Ricciardo in 2014 is a case study of just that. The fact that he came out of the pits, had Alonso and Hamilton to pass, and Alonso and Hamilton in between himself and his second career victory. And with just a handful of laps to go, he passed Lewis Hamilton on the exit of turn 3, on the outside of turn 3 in fact, in what was a stunning move there. And he made the grip advantage count against Fernando Alonso a couple of laps later, as he was last of the late breakers into turn 1, got up the inside of the Ferrari, and that proved to be the move that won him the race. Jerry Horner's reaction in the garage, rivaling that of a Pokemon Go player who finds Ditto. See, I do my research before these things. And in terms of heading into the event, what the all-important standings look like is that Rosberg arrives to Hungary with a 1-point lead. That, of course, comes from on the back of Silverstone, when it did look as though he'd have an even greater lead, or a slightly greater lead, I should say, over his teammate and championship rival Lewis Hamilton, barring the German's demotion to third place following the team radio infringement. Now, in terms of that team radio, it's as good a chance as any to explain my opinions on that and my views on the penalty Rosberg received at Silverstone. Personally, I don't think the penalty was great enough. And the reason for that is, if we cast aside any discussions as to whether the rule should exist in the first place or whether Rosberg should have been penalised, and if we take a look at the regulations as they're written, Rosberg essentially gained 15 points out of that race from breaking the rules, or from his team breaking the rules, I should say. Because ultimately, without Tony Ross's advice on the radio, without him telling Nico to shift through 7th gear, Rosberg wouldn't have finished that race. The team have admitted that, he's alluded to that as well. And so not finishing the race, it would have been a DNF, a nil point score, and ultimately 15 points was gained because of the advice given. So in a fair world, if we're, like I said, reading the regulations as they're written, Rosberg should have theoretically been disqualified from that one. But alas, he wasn't. And to be fair, I think the actual ruling on that makes the actual radio restrictions fairly untenable as a regulation now, because teams can weigh up, well, if we're going to lose 10 seconds as a result of an issue a driver's experiencing, but we can fix that issue by telling him he can do X, Y, and Z to fix it, then ultimately, as long as that's his game time is going to be more than 10 seconds, it's worthwhile to take the hit and take the penalty. So that's why I think the rule is kind of heading on its way to the skip right now, and that's a story for another day somewhat. I can go into that a lot more depth, but this is, like I said, the Hungarian preview, so we'll move on. Yes, 1-6-8 plays 1-6-7 in the championship standings between Rosberg and Hamilton. And that gap as such, we're heading to probably Hamilton's best circuit on the calendar. He's got 4 wins at the Hungaroring, and in terms of how it suits his driving style, it just seems to be a circuit that he has a rhythm at, a flow at every time he goes there. And certainly Rosberg's going to find it tough to beat him. Who could forget in 2014 when Hamilton actually came from the back of the grid in that crazy mixed up race, like I said earlier, that Ricciardo ended up winning. And Hamilton eventually got the jump on Rosberg, and team orders almost came into play between the two Mercedes guys. But Hamilton gave the classic now team radio response of, "I'm not slowing down for Nico." So will we see any more of that? There certainly is plenty of niggle between the two heading into the event, what with news stories and reports and all speculation among the paddock paddock rumour mill saying that the two drivers just don't get on, and Hamilton adding that bit of spice at the Silverstone's fan forum when one of the fans asked, "Do you actually like Nico?" and Hamilton replied with no comment. So there's definitely a bit of niggle there. What Mercedes don't want is another collision between the two, but if it does come down to an on-track battle this weekend, then gloves are off by the sounds of things, so leading into it certainly. Ferrari and Red Bull could be a very fascinating duel this weekend as well, on the basis that the two are divided by 6 points in the standings on the back of what was a dire weekend for Ferrari at Silverstone and comparatively a really good event for Red Bull. In terms of that 6-point margin as well, it's as small as it's been ever since the start of the season. So Red Bull, who always did, in fairness, cite the second half of the year as when they were really going to gain some ground on the competition and really pull up their socks as such. They've had a good first half of the year, and Ferrari are definitely on the back foot heading into the next rounds, and Red Bull are probably likely to take second place off of Ferrari at this event, given their track record at the Hungaroring. So there could be a changing of the guard in regards to Merck's closest rivals this weekend. Elsewhere in the table, it's pretty much status quo recently, and I don't expect a massive amount to maybe change. Sauber, of course, are yet to score, and what with changeable conditions forecast for Sunday, and the Hungaroring often throwing up a few surprises, then anything's possible. Definitely a weekend for Felipe Nasr and Marcus Ericsson to potentially get off the mark, particularly given that this probably isn't going to be one of Manor's best circuits, and Sauber should definitely look to get ahead of Wehrlein and Haryanto this weekend. This is most likely going to be the race where Mercedes as an entity are most threatened. Certainly, I think it's the first time in the V6 hybrid era that Mercedes are not the runaway favourites going into the weekend. Sure, we've seen them under fire when they've been at it during a weekend, such as Singapore last season, for example, when they were just simply off the pace. But actually heading into the weekend, I'd say Red Bull are actually the favourites. We saw how good Daniel Ricciardo performed, how well he performed, I should say, in Monaco, which is a very similar circuit and characteristic to the Hungaroring, where power doesn't really matter. It's all about the downforce, the kind of driver feel with the car, how you take the curbs. And so ultimately, Red Bull should be in very good shape this weekend. Verstappen's obviously entering as well with plenty of momentum gained from Silverstone, while it was second place in the end for him, which, to be fair, judging by his performance, I think that's probably what he deserves out of that one. He kept the Mercedes boys honest throughout the entire race. He didn't give them a moment's peace as such, and didn't give them that margin of comfort zone that they're used to, like I said, over the 2014, 15 and even this season so far. So both Ricciardo and Verstappen are in form. Red Bull are in form as a team, and like I said, they're my favourites for the weekend. As to who will win out of the Verstappen and Ricciardo battle, that's anyone's guess at the moment. They really are giving each other a good run for the money as such, and certainly expect that to continue this weekend. Obviously, Ricciardo has the more experience running at the front of the Hungaroring, winning in 2014, nearly winning last year as well. It looked like he was about to pull off a similar shock win in the closing stages there, until his collision with Hamilton after the safety car. So certainly looking forward to seeing what Red Bull can bring to the table this weekend. Even Ferrari, at the end of the day, Sebastian Vettel was the victor last year around the Hungaroring, and certainly Ferrari have been a little bit off the pace recently. It's certainly something they've got to address if they want to maintain that second position in the standings, given they entered this season hoping that it could be a championship winning campaign. Losing out to Red Bull in second and ending up down in third would be nothing short of a disaster for them. So they really do have to start a bit of a fight back and kind of taking the fight back to Red Bull, because they really have been on the back foot recently. But like I said, speaking about on the back foot, Toto Wolff's alluded to it himself on the lead up to this weekend. He commented on Autosport just the other day that this circuit has not been kind to us over the past 2 years, and it plays to the strengths of our rivals. The Red Bull is a car that functions well, where high drag isn't penalised as much as at other types of circuit. Interestingly, he actually concluded with, "We will need to be faultless." And essentially that's something that, I think Mercedes are going to have to not leave anything in the garage this weekend. They're going to have to perform absolutely at the maximum in both qualifying and the race if they're going to take the win. 2014 and 15, they were both cars were effectively out of the run, and neither in 2014 looked like they were going to take the victory. Hamilton ran Alonso and Ricciardo close, but he never really took much of a march on the race. And again, 2015, just lots of costly little errors from Hamilton and Rosberg, which eventually cost them. What they cannot afford, as I alluded to earlier as well, though, is another collision. Now, the two have been prepped and been told that any incidents such as the one we saw in Austria a couple of races back will result in action being taken. Whether they fear that action is another thing, but ultimately going forward they can't afford to be tripping themselves up, particularly when Red Bull and Ferrari could be as strong as they are this weekend. Now, in regards to tyres and regards to tyre selection, Ferrari have chosen a step softer than their rivals in terms of bringing 9 sets of the super soft tyre, whereas Mercedes bringing 7, Red Bull bring 8. But ultimately, I expect that to be dialed out, and they'll all be going into the race with a similar allocation as such. It just depends on what they'll use in practice sessions primarily, and that's certainly the trend that's emerged since we've had these new regulations giving 3 tyre compounds to each team, and to each driver I should say, throughout the weekend. So yeah, final closing thoughts in regards to the weekend. I'm massively looking forward to it. I think it's one of the most open Grand Prix we've had, or we're going to have, for quite some time. Red Bull look very strong going into it. Like I said, they're actually my favourites for the first time in a few years, and Mercedes are definitely going to have to work hard for this one. It's not going to come easy to them. Please leave in the comments below your predictions for the top 3. I haven't planned this. I'm just going to put it off the top of my head now. I'm going to say Ricciardo to win, take his second Hungarian Grand Prix victory. I'm going to go with Verstappen in second, and I'm going to go with Hamilton in third. So I'm going to go with the Red Bull 1-2 finish. Let me know if I'm barking up the wrong tree, if I've got it totally wrong, in the comments below. If you've liked what you've seen so far in this video, and what you've seen so far from my real life F1 content, then please leave a like and share the video, like I said, if you have enjoyed. And there'll certainly be more content like this coming up in the future. Race previews, me talking about races that have happened, also as well as that, looking at news stories and other bits and bobs that spark my interest when the F1 paddock gets its chin wagging as such. So I'll leave it for now. Hope everybody enjoys the race weekend. I'll obviously be tweeting throughout it, but for now at least folks, thanks for watching and goodbye.